Ryhor Nizhnikau, Senior Research Fellow, Finnish Institute for International Affairs, is joining me right now. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Delighted to have you with us. So, I mean, it may come as a shock to some, right? I mean, that the EU is introducing more tariffs on Russian and Belarusian grain imports. I mean, why are they importing grain from Russia and Belarus in the first place? And who is doing that? I mean, which countries and in what amounts? I guess we sort of need to lay it out.
Well, you're totally right. It's long overdue decision, especially when we know that there has been some controversies and problems with the Ukrainian grain going into the EU recently in the last 2 years. We have to say that it's not much. So we are talking about just around 1 billion euros export per year. So it's just a few million tons. But nevertheless, it's an important step to show solidarity with Ukraine and actually stop Russian regime from benefiting and basically supporting the war with this money.
Right, I mean, because the EU has been introducing all these sanctions while they're still importing something, you know, sort of, one could say so mundane as available from other places, such as, you know, grain from Russia and Belarus. And sort of, what kind of, I mean, so you're saying it will not have a major impact on either Russian or Belarusian economies?
No, not at all. Definitely, Russia will divert this amount to other markets. So this grain will be exported because there is a need in the world markets, and we can say that the EU decision partially can be explained. I mean, the decision a few years ago to continue to import Russian grain because of the situation in the global markets. But still, this is a very good decision, given that there has been reports that previously Russia steals Ukrainian grain and actually exports the grain that it stole from the Ukrainian fields.
Wow, oh, this is awful. I mean, Ukraine has been called the breadbasket of the world, right? So I did not know that Russians sort of practice such a thing. I mean, such as stealing grain of all things. All right, but I mean, not all of the sort of EU countries, member states, were on board with this decision, right? I believe that Austria and Hungary were not.
Right. Right, you're totally right. Austria, as far as I know, actually voted against, and Hungary abstained. To me, it's rather a question of diplomatic stance. We know that Hungary is the closest ally of Vladimir Putin in the EU, and this is a different story, a different topic, a very worrisome and important to discuss, but probably another time. But for Austria, I think it's rather business elites connections with Russia. We still can talk about Raiffeisen and specific role that Vienna plays for Russia within the European Union.
Actually, can we talk about Raiffeisen, since you mentioned that? I mean, I'm not sure if all of our viewers follow. Yeah. So what's the deal? Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Well, this is the question that Raiffeisen and its business in Russia has an important, Raiffeisen's Russian business is an important part of its portfolio. And for a long time, Raiffeisen is still working there in Russia and Belarus. And for a long time, Austria actually used Raiffeisen and its continued presence in Russia as a type of a bargaining chip with the Ukrainian government, so that it tried to basically bargain that Raiffeisen would stay in Russia and Austria would continue or would really support and back Ukraine within the EU, and this is still going on, and it's an important topic. We know that Raiffeisen probably earns a lot from the Russian market. Of course, it's difficult to leave, but this is a story where we have to really decide where we move on, because we know that sanctions do not work as effectively as we want, that some businesses or quite a lot of businesses are still working in Russia. There are still the question of secondary sanctions, but we still need to, decide on which side we are. Otherwise, Russia will continue actually be able to sustain its economy to fund the war.
Right. I mean, Raiffeisen Bank is not the only entity still present in Russia, right? There are also other Western companies. And I believe, I mean, all of them are paying taxes, right, to the Kremlin, sort of filling their coffers with additional funds for the war effort, right? I mean, so do you think that there's something to be done? I mean, something to be done by some of the Western countries? Can they pull some of these businesses out, given that they're private businesses?
Well, it's a good story because on one hand, some of these businesses cannot leave because they basically can't sell the businesses, that their actives, their assets are frozen in Russia, or some kind of they're taking legal action to disallow them to leave or to basically stop working. But definitely some businesses continue to work and benefit by different schemes. And there shall be an effort. Obviously, it's a difficult legal effort because you need to basically find this out. And then there is obviously a lot of vested interest in the EU, meaning that some governments would obviously try to back up their businesses. We know, for instance, how Hungarians worked with their bank, OTP, meaning that they were blocking some of the important pro-Ukraine moves within the EU up until Ukraine government said that they fine with removing OTP Bank from the sanction list. So there is a lot of going on, a lot of bargaining going on with the EU. But this is important for the EU to basically show that, yes, it's no longer fine to stay in the grain zone when Russia indeed finds massive resources to fund the war and even expand its war effort, like what we see now in the Kharkiv region.
Right, absolutely. And I mean, just, if one were to think that for some of these companies, this is a trade-off, I mean, for some of these countries, right, it's sort of all about business. Ryhor Nizhnikau, thank you, sir, for being with us this morning.
Thank you.